This week, everything is wrong. Last week, we saw Major General Joseph Hooker, the commander of the Army of the Potomac, pin full General Robert.E.Lee, commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, at Fredericksburg. Hooker sent out his cavalry under Major General George Stoneman to move south and east to cut off Lee's line of retreat and harass Richmond, Virginia, the Confederate capital. He crossed the Rappahannock to the west of the Army of Northern Virginia with the 5th, 11th, and 12th Corps. Afterwards, he was joined by elements of the 2nd Corps and called on the 3rd Corps. This left in Fredericksburg the 1st and 6th Corps under Major General John Sedgwick. Full General Robert.E.Lee thus faces to his front John Sedgwick with a threatening force of 26,000. To his flank, Sickles marching to Hooker with 19,000 or so men, and Hooker already with 54,000 men in his flank. Not even to mention the Union's cavalry, which is in his rear. Lee is without a good portion of his army, and Lieutenant General James Longstreet, his right-hand man, well, they are further south, bringing supplies and supporting supply lines. Lee thought this was a safe time to do foraging. He is mistaken.
My plans are perfect. When I start to carry them out, may God have mercy on Bobby Lee, for I shall have none.
Hooker wants Lee to withdraw so he can spring a trap on him, and Lee knows this. Instead of falling back, the Old Virginian splits his command, sending Major General Richard Anderson with his division to slow down Hooker's advance. He then ordered Major General Lafayette McLaw to support Anderson. That's 2 divisions against over 3 corps present. Next, he calls for Major General Jeb Stuart to return to him. This is his cavalry. If he wants to know what the Union is doing, he needs them close by. The return of Stuart isn't an easy one. Over the night, the 6th New York Cavalry Regiment has cut off the Confederate cavalry commander. After light skirmishing, the Union regiment forms up on a fence behind a gate. Rear General Fitzhugh Lee, of the Confederacy, is sent with the 5th Virginia to dislodge these New Yorkers. But as his men pass the gate, they are hit by accurate carbine fire. This forces Stuart to bring all the men he can to bear against the Union forces. Outnumbered, the commander of the 6th gets his men on horseback and charges the Confederates. He dies in the breakout attempt, as do many of his men. The regiment suffers a great number captured, but some do make it out. Stuart continues his ride back to Lee. The morning of the 1st is a trying day for the Confederates. Jackson believes that it's not just auspicious, but an important day. He puts on his new uniform, a brilliant-looking high officer one, and rides to meet Lee, who is going over correspondences. They travel close to the Rappahannock River, and are able to look over the men of the 6th Corps under Major General John Sedgwick, and the 1st Corps under Major General John F. Reynolds. Sedgwick has so far been idle, and we expect him to stay this way.
The attack will come from above.
The commander of the Army of Northern Virginia then wires Confederate President Jefferson Davis.
If I had Longstreet's division, I would feel safe.
Thus, General Lee's gamble grows. He splits the army even further, telling General Jackson,
Leave sufficient troops to hold our lines, and with the main body, give battle to the approaching column. At midnight on the 30th, General McLaws marched toward Chancellorsville. Jackson followed at dawn next morning with the remaining divisions.
General Jackson moves towards his men, passing the 2nd North Carolina.
Stonewall's coming.
The ranks straighten up and get ready, and begin the long march towards Chancellorsville. By 8 in the morning, Jackson's force arrives on the Orange Turnpike and Orange Plank Road. And when they arrive, they make their presence known. At 9 in the morning, Hooker gets a report from Mr. Lowe, his Balloon Corps officer.
Heavy columns with enemy's infantry and artillery are now moving up the river. A heavy reserve on the heights opposite the crossing.
This tells Hooker nothing. He still believes that General Jackson is opposite Sedgwick, and that these are just reinforcements to Lee's position. The sun rises and Hooker waits. He has been cautious so far, and has gotten the Confederates pinned. Rashness under Burnside doomed this army. He won't make the same mistake. After hours, he orders the destruction of General Anderson's division, supposedly the only Confederate force opposing him. The 5th Corps 2nd Division under Major General Sykes is to move down the Orange Turnpike, and the 12th Corps under Major General Henry Slocum, the Orange Plank Road. Major General Oliver Howard will hold in the reserve with the 11th Corps, and the 2nd Corps detachment under Brigadier General John Gibbon is to cross over at Banks Ford and reinforce Hooker. For Gibbon, this isn't easy. The men of Sully's brigade are going to muster out soon, and for some it's overdue. The government didn't accept them the day they signed, meaning that these men were spending more time in the army than they initially agreed to. General Sully can't get his men to move. Gibson ordered his other men to load their weapons and face the mutineers. He then orders them to return to duties. They just stand there. He won't fire. He then orders the loyal soldiers to ready themselves.
Every man who's ready to do his duty, step forward.
The mutinous brigade cheers and steps forward.
Go do your duty.
Back to the Confederates. General Jackson arrived at the forward Confederate position and found General McLaws' division entrenching. For the aggressive strategy that Stonewall is used to, this is tantamount to surrender. He orders it stopped and devises a movement down the Orange Turnpike and Orange Road. At 11:30, men of the 5th Corps encounters McLaws' men on the Orange Turnpike. Major General Sykes forms a line of battle with Major General Slocum on the right and Major General Hancock, 2nd Division, 2nd Corps, in support. The engagement starts with the 12th Virginia Cavalry striking the 8th Pennsylvania Cavalry. The Union has to give ground. Sykes is facing the Confederates on a ridge above him, behind a rail fence. This allows for the rebels to pour fire into his ranks, but after a short firefight and a charge, Sykes forces the 12th back. The Virginia cavalry is decimated because their commander is dead, so when the order to fall back is given, it isn't received till way later, allowing for the capture of 80 men from their ranks. Not all is good for the Union. Brigadier General Wright of Major General Anderson's division takes his brigade of Georgians and charges Slocum's flank, but fails to make any real advance. The rest of Anderson's division moves against Sykes, striking his front and flanks. General McLaws pushes on Sykes' flanks, and Major General A.P. Hill moves to reinforce this full-fledged assault. Major General Hancock takes his division and reinforces Sykes, continuing to hold against the assault of 3 divisions. Major General George G. Meade, with the rest of the 5th Corps, moves along the River Road and sees Banks Ford at 1 p.m. But this doesn't matter because the final of McLaws' men are brought to bear against General Sykes, with Brigadier General Seam's brigade striking him and pushing back the Union towards Chancellorsville. On the Orange Plank Road, General Posey and Wright of the Confederacy push their way to Catherine Furnace, south of Chancellorsville. It's a slow move, advancing in a marsh when Union artillery cuts into their ranks, decimating their manpower. It seems as if Jackson's offensive is for naught, until word comes in.
I will close and help all I can. Keep close on Chancellorsville.
Hooker learns of what is going on, and it is a surprise. The enemy was supposed to fall back and spring his trap, not advance against him. Therefore, he makes a dreadful decision. The Union is to fall back to their original positions. All the ground they have gained is to be surrendered. At 1, the order goes out to Sykes and Slocum that they are to return to camp and start digging trenches. The Union commanders are angered beyond belief. For Major General George G. Meade,
if he can't hold the top of the hill, how does he expect to hold the bottom of it?
By the night of the 1st, the Army of the Potomac is in a thicket-choked countryside. The 5th Corps anchors on the left flank, going to the Rappahannock and moving to Mineral Springs Run. The 2nd Corps was in the east, between the right flank of the 5th Corps and the junction of Orange Turnpike and the Plank Road. South of the 2nd Corps is the 12th Corps, stretching along the Turnpike and Plank Road. And in the west is the 11th Corps, which moves from the Pike to Talley's Farm, secured with woods. These woods don't just secure the Union, it also obscures less used roads from their vision, like the Brock Road, that met with the Turnpike east of the Wilderness Tavern, but ran all the way to the Confederate camp, which is where we shall turn. Lee and Jackson await the arrival of Stuart, who only arrives at night. Lee is confused by Hooker's decision. It makes sense that Slocum had withdrawn. He was assaulted, but Meade wasn't struck. Stuart rides around the Union, realizing their strength and defense, and then retires back. Stuart doesn't know Hooker's plan either. He has Lee pinned, but seems to be getting ready to defend. Stonewall is back at camp, built off the remnants of the Union. Tables and chairs are made from Union cracker crates. The fire lights up the face of the Virginia general. He waits for Lee and Stuart to arrive, but he knows what he wants. The commander of the Army of Northern Virginia sits by him, and they examine the map together. Soon a horse arrives. General Stuart has a report from General Lee. The Army of the Potomac has its flank beyond Wilderness Church and along the Orange Turnpike. There's a real enemy force against them. The good news? The Union's right flank is only protected by woods. There aren't fortifications or any real defenses there. 11th Corps is exposed and ready for the taking. Jackson then speaks. If he can take his corps, go west, and then strike north against the 11th Corps' flank, he can roll up Hooker's line and destroy the Union Army. He and Stuart, with around 32,000 men, would move alone. This would leave Lee with only General Anderson's and McLaws' division. We would feign attacks, leaving Hooker to believe that Jackson was still there, allowing for a surprise assault. Lee listens and then nods.
If the enemy is too strong for me, I shall fall back. If successful here, Fredericksburg will be saved. I may be forced to the Orange and Alexandria or Virginia Central, but I'll be in position to contest the enemy's advance. Endeavor to turn Hooker's right flank and gain his rear, leaving a force in front to hold him in check and conceal the movement.
This is such a great gamble. Sedgwick has 30,000 men facing off against a division and a brigade of Confederates. Hooker has 70,000 or so men with him, of which 45,000 are ready to face Lee. Lee is gambling that Hooker and Sedgwick won't advance for hours, allowing that Stonewall will be able to sneak unnoticed and that the 11th Corps will be unready. If Major General Howard learns of Stonewall's advance, Lee is destroyed. If Sedgwick advances, it is over for the Confederacy. If Hooker assaults, Jeff Davis will be hanged. As the meeting ends, the sky turns red as the sun rises. Stonewall and Stuart move to their men. McLaw and Anderson are told of the plan and prepare their regiments. It would have been best if the night sky stayed, allowing for the dark to conceal the secret advance. But there was no time for that. In 24 hours, the Confederacy shall either be saved or destroyed. Lieutenant General Stonewall Jackson is looking over his plan. He has never been overly cautious, but he also does not wish to take unnecessary risks. He sends the word out to anyone who knows the area if there is a better way to the Union's right flank. He meets with Charles C. Welford, the manager of Catherine Furnace, a Confederate sympathizer. Welford points out a shorter route and lesser known, perfect for Jackson. He goes to Lee.
I propose to go right around there. Go ahead.
Brigadier General Robert Rhodes takes DHL's division, which heads the march, followed by Brigadier General Colston, leading Trimble's division, then A.P. Hill and his light division, Brigadier General Archer with his brigade, and Brigadier General Thomas, finally artillery, and then the rear guard of the 23rd Georgia. It's important to see how decimated the Confederate command is. Many of these men have been with Stonewall for over a year, but many are underqualified for their command. Stonewall's men march south, west, and finally north. It will take hours to march, and they are already late. They will have to make it up on the way there. Lee has 15,000 men to hold Hooker at bay. He can't hold back lest Hooker takes the advantage, but they also can't go too far, letting the Union realize their small numbers. They have to probe and feint attacks, and they have to keep doing this until Jackson arrives. Reinforcements arrive at the Union's left flank. Hooker is still unaware of the rebels' plans. Lee orders McLaws and Anderson to take the initiative and be forceful, but they are not to attack.
Unless a favorable opportunity should present itself.
The commander of the Union Army of the Potomac is feeling secure. He has his artillery ready, and Lee, while being unpredictable, is pinned. The only thing worrying is the lack of cavalry, depriving him of real knowledge of Lee's formation and deployment. But no matter, Hooker can predict his movements. Lee will withdraw soon. He is facing an impossible situation. Hooker forms up an artillery reserve at Bullock Farm, and then orders Brigadier General Averell's cavalry, the only real horsemen he has, to reconnoiter the enemy's position. Hooker then begins the inspection of his forces with Major General Daniel Edgar Sickles and Captain Cyrus Comstock, chief engineer of the Army of the Potomac, who both accompany him. First, they examine the 5th and 12th Corps. These men are veterans of the Peninsula Campaign and Antietam. They are aware of the strength of the enemy they are facing. Rifle pits, abattises, and breastworks have been prepared. Generals Meade, Hancock, and Couch are better safe than sorry. Then Hooker rides to Major General Howard's 11th Corps. These men are not as reliable. These are mostly immigrants who fell in love with Major General Franz Sigel, its former commander. It's a small corps of Germans who really only know how to say, "I fits Miss Sigel." Howard is a good commander, but the men under him are unhappy. Hooker orders Major General John Reynolds and the 1st Corps to reinforce Howard. They will arrive tonight. Howard joins Hooker in the inspection of the 11th Corps. He complains about how extended his line is. There are giant gaps between General Schurz's and Devon's divisions. Captain Comstock asks Hooker to close those spaces. But with the thickness of the woods and the fact that it's on the other side of the battlefield, there's really no need. Howard also takes no great care in defending himself. There are no breastworks nor fortifications. Only 3 units, numbering 700 men, guard the right angle of the Orange Turnpike, the right flank. Comstock is still worried that the force isn't enough. It also hinders sight, so then he will be right upon the unit if they come through there. But Howard is confident.
Will anybody come through there? They may.
Hooker returns to his headquarters at 9 and is bombarded by messages. Major General George Meade's 5th Corps has been engaged from the southeast, and in front of Sickles and the 2nd Corps is a sizable Confederate force. Aha, thinks Hooker. The enemy are withdrawing to Gordonville. But he might as well warn Howard.
Determine the positions you will take, in whatever direction he advances. Have heavy reserve to meet this contingency. The right of your line does not appear strong enough. Advance your pickets for observation to obtain timely information of their approach. I am taking measures to resist any attack from the west.
Howard isn't too worried. This isn't an order, just a suggestion. The woods are still strong, and any attack that would come would be from the south. He orders a rifle pit dug across Chancellorsville Road. At 11 a.m., Hooker gets a report. Any presence reported in front of Devon's division. This is probably just some random pickets spotting some other random pickets. No further reports come, and Hooker grows confident. He orders Sickles to harass the movement. Not attack, just harass. At 2, Hooker tells General Couch,
Lee is in full retreat, and I have sent Sickles out to capture his artillery.
He then orders General Slocum to move south in support of Sickles, who are to advance down on the road in front of Catherine Furnace. This creates a gap of Hazel Grove separating Sickles and Slocum from Hooker, Meade, Couch, and Howard. The 3rd Corps was given the order, harass the enemy. This limits what Sickles can do, but he does the most he can. Offensive is the way of war. He sends forth Brigadier General David Birney with the 1st Division. Birney strikes the 23rd Georgia at Catherine Furnace. The 8th Pennsylvania, with the Union infantry, destroys the Georgians. Union cavalryman commiserates with a Confederate veteran, lamenting how it feels to be sacrificed so the main body would escape unscathed.
You have done a big thing just now, but wait till Jackson gets around on your right.
The Union horseman just laughs at this bragging bravado. Stonewall has arrived before the 11th Corps and is observing their unready nature. He orders Rhodes to advance and move on the south side of the old Orange Turnpike, west of the Union lines. Union pickets spot them and alert Howard, but he pays it no mind. Hooker told him the enemy was retreating. These reports are the offsprings of fears. Hooker therefore sends word to Sedgwick.
The enemy is fleeing, trying to save his trains.
Everything is going according to his plan. Lee gets word of the destruction of the 23rd Georgia. Fearing that Jackson has been found, he moves to distract Hooker. He sends forth Brigadier General Posey's brigade to halt Birney, which it does. Sickles would love to assault, but he's under orders not to advance. He might use his own initiative if he had strong reinforcements, allowing him to hold his line. Hooker therefore ordered Brigadier General Barlow and his brigade from the 11th Corps to reinforce Sickles. This reassures Howard of the safety of his position. It's 5 p.m., and Jackson's men are in position far to the right of the 11th Corps. Hooker's men have lit their supper campfires. The sun is setting behind Jackson's men, blinding any Union soldier who would look their way. Jackson deploys his column, Rhodes in front, followed by Colston and then A.P. Hill. Stewart's cavalry and the Stonewall Brigade are to hold the right flank. Colquitt, adjacent to Stewart, is told that the flanks are protected. Do not fear, just advance. Jackson rides to the front of his column. He looks at his men up and down. He moves to Rhodes.
You can go forward, sir.
Union camp is enjoying supper. Some are on their bedrolls. Many have stacked their weapons and are chatting. The Germans are enjoying their meal when they hear a low howl, the rebel yell coming from the sun. Rhodes' men have their rifles at low port and are charging at them. Panic afflicts the corps.
From the trees to their west, in the gathering gloom, came an unearthly moan as ghostly gray shapes flitted towards them from the tree line. Musketry ripped into them. The Confederates changed from a fast walk to a charge, their weapons held higher, eyes hard, screaming a rebel yell. The Union soldiers were stunned. Before they could form a defensive position, indeed before many could grab weapons, Jackson's foot cavalry was among them.
The first man to oppose him is Colonel Leopold von Gielsa, who has the 41st, 45th, 54th New York, and the 153rd Pennsylvania. Instantly, the 41st and 45th break rank and flee before contact. The 54th New York and the 153rd open fire into the oncoming onslaught. As rebels near the 44th, it runs, and the 153rd is left alone and annihilated. The nearby two cannons open into the rebels, but are soon abandoned as their horses are killed. Von Gielsa's brigade is completely melted, opening up the rest of Brigadier General Charles Devon's division to the Confederate charge. The battle moves into the woods, where the confusion reaches its maximum level. The Confederates are not supposed to be coming. They're supposed to be retreating, and if not that, attacking from the front, not the right. The Union fears firing into the thick woods because, as twilight has arrived, all men are just gray shapes. Colonel Lee runs to Devon's HQ, hoping to get permission to face the enemy, but Devon's, drunk, refuses. He tries again, but Devon again refuses. The 75th Ohio, who was Devon's reserves, doesn't wait for his commander's permission and charges. But is overwhelmed. Devon's division is thus destroyed, their line folded. The Union camp is abandoned. The Confederates take time to ransack the camp before they continue the charge, but the quickness of their victory has created a problem. Their left flank is ahead of the right flank, exposing the Confederates. The Union can't take advantage of this, because Devon's men rush to Schurz's division, disorganizing them. Schurz has placed 3 regiments to protect his right wing, the 58th New York, 82nd Ohio, and 26th Wisconsin. These men pour volleys into the Confederates. They're soon overtaken by the rebels. Dillinger's Battery I of the 1st Ohio fired at great rate into the oncoming rebels. They had to fall back, but were able to stall the Confederate juggernaut. The fleeing German troops don't rally with them, allowing the North Carolinians to take care of the horses, and forcing the Union to abandon their guns. One private goes as far as to say,
Damn the Dutch!
With the end of 2 of his divisions, Howard finally realizes the enemy is before him. He sees his men routing.
Such a mass of fugitives I haven't seen since Bull Run.
He grabs the colors and mounts his horse, moving towards the front lines to rally his men. He isn't liked by his men, and they are unmoved by his bravery. All that remains of his command is Colonel Adolphus Bushbeck's brigade, and really all that matters of it is the 154th New York. They were able to rally some men and hold down the rifle pits facing west, with nearly 4,000 men from a mismatch of units. For 30 minutes, these men cut down rows of Confederates, but the seeming endless stream of rebels overwhelmed them. There's a problem, though. The Confederates' advance has been too quick. The 3 divisions that formed the 3 lines of the southern advance have become mixed up. They still advance, but it's more a quilt of different units moving forward than a well-organized and coordinated military assault. Out of all of Jackson's commanders, the worst hit was Colquitt. He believes that Union cavalry is to his right and therefore slows his advance and faces south. This delays the advance of Jackson's right flank, and even when they return to normal, the damage was already done to Jackson. Stonewall writes to his men,
Press them! Press them!
He only pauses to congratulate some of his men and gives thanks to God for his victory. He has been pressing the 11th Corps for a mile and is only 2 miles from Hooker's HQ. But with the sun setting, does he have time? Howard's Corps runs into Sickles' Corps, folding the 3rd Corps in on itself. It takes till 8 p.m. before General Sickles can get his battle line back in order. The 8th Pennsylvania Cavalry were caught unaware during this time, being the link between the 3rd Corps and the rest of the Union at Hazel Grove. They've been waiting for hours to pursue the Confederates after their victory against the 23rd Georgia, when they are ordered to rally the 11th Corps. The cavalrymen set off north and eastward, hoping to find stragglers. In the darkness, they come across some wary figures. They move in close to return them to their command, only at the last minute realizing these aren't Howard's men, but instead Confederate Virginal Rhodes' men. Rifle volleys tear in the 8th, and after a failed charge they are dispersed. This leaves the 3rd Corps alone. Major General Joseph Hooker rides to Brigadier General Hiram Berry, who commands the division Hooker once held. He orders Berry to
receive the enemy on your bayonets.
Berry takes the 2nd Division of the 3rd Corps and faces towards Jackson, looking into the darkness, just waiting. Major General Meade turns his 5th Corps to link up with Berry and the 1st Corps under Major General Reynolds, who was supposed to reinforce Howard, if you remember all that time ago. Well, they just arrived. On the left, Brigadier General Alpheus Williams takes the 1st Division of the 12th Corps and secures Berry's flank. At 9 p.m., the Union line was reformed. Sickles takes over here, organizing the line to take on Jackson. Some of Howard's men rally behind Berry, and soon Stonewall's men arrive. They are caught in Sickles' trap. From all around, the Union fires, cutting down paths in the Confederate ranks. Their cannons break apart companies, disorganizing the already ragged advance. Jackson halts his assault and gives time for his men to regroup. He had hoped for more ground to be gained during the day, but the bright moon gives off enough light for him to assault Sickles' formation. Major General A.P. Hill is ordered to move his men to the front and
press them! Cut them off from the United States forward, Hill!
Stonewall believes now is the time to do reconnaissance. He takes David Kipe, a private of the 9th Virginia, to be his guide. Jackson and his staff ride into no man's land. It's quiet and peaceful, only interrupted by the occasional musket fire at ghosts. Jackson is worried by the 8th Pennsylvania and orders his pickets to be alert for cavalry. He studies the Union line until hearing the sound of barricades being built. He has work to do. He turns the scouting party around and heads back to his line. The 18th North Carolina is of Brigadier General James H. Lane's brigade of Major General Ambrose P. Hill's division. They have served since the Peninsula Campaign. Nothing about it is particularly notable besides the fact that they are pickets tonight. At their position, the sounds of hoofbeats are heard. They call out passwords. They are nothing back. And, with no confirmation, they fire into the Union attack. And then another volley, and then another. A cry is heard. They shot their own men. Jackson suffered multiple wounds. In his left arm, it was hit twice, and his right hand. He's bleeding severely. Litter bearers are called forth to carry Jackson away. The knowledge of Jackson's wounding, well, it would destroy the Confederates under him. When inquired who is on the litter, they just answer, a Confederate officer. Stonewall gives his command to Major General A.P. Hill. The two have feuded since the North Virginia campaign, but Stonewall believes that he's the best commander around. And with that, Jackson leads the battle. A.P. Hill moves around, trying to get Jackson's forces ready until he too is wounded. This one is far less serious, just shrapnel to the calves, but it still needs tending to. Next in line is General Rhodes, but he is inexperienced for a division commander, much less a corps. Instead, he passes on the command to Major General Jeb Stuart. Lee hears of the wounding of two of his greatest commanders, but there is no time to look over that. He says,
"Victory is dearly bought which deprives us of the services of General Jackson even for a short time."
After lamenting for a moment, he sends word to Stuart.
"The enemy must be pressed. Dispossess them of Chancellorsville. I will join you as soon as I can, but let nothing delay driving the enemy from his position.
At 3:30 a.m. on May the 3rd, Stuart receives Lee's orders. The Union position has changed in the meantime. They have formed a three-sided salient with the 1st and 5th Corps, forming their line from the north of the salient to the ford. The 3rd Corps holds just in front of the important Hazel Grove. The men of Couch and Slocum's Corps form a square. Hooker is worried about his position. He doubts he can hold Chancellorsville unless he counterattacks, but is wary to do so. He is proud of his artillery, which is positioned at the Fairview Knoll. Sickles sends word to Hooker asking to overtake Hazel Grove. With it, the Union's position would be saved. But Hooker is asleep, and his chief of staff won't wake him. Stuart has been given words from Jackson that he should do what he thinks best, and therefore keeps up the Confederate plan of striking before the enemy can. He orders Brigadier General Lane, McGowan, to assault at the turnpike. 5:30 a.m., they are on the move. Archer meets with resistance. His line wasn't straight in before the advance. McGowan fails to support him and moves in front of the Hazel Grove. Sickles holds the grove all night, and in the dawn, Hooker visits his position. It's a salient, and Hooker doesn't want to take such an offensive stance, and orders the 3rd Corps to abandon it. General Daniel E. Sickles protests the order. This is an ideal area for artillery. But he has to obey his superior commander. Archer's men come into contact with the 3rd Corps rear guard. The brigade of the 1st Division of the 3rd Corps is struck by Archer's men, but are aided by the cannons from Fairview Knoll and Captain Huntington's battery. At 6:30 a.m., the Confederates are able to take the area. Colonel E. Porter Alexander is the chief of artillery and sees Hazel Grove as an artillery park. He sends word to Lee, orders 30 cannons to occupy the grove. Sickles' men at Fairview stand with multiple line of breastworks, heavy brush, and rolling terrain. Deadfalls, rifle pits, and abattises are manned by 4 lines of Union troops. The slopes of the knoll block the view of the Union artillery, and the terrain makes large-scale communication impossible. This battle will be one of individual units dueling. General McGowan's brigade comes into contact with the 37th New York. The South Carolinians engage in a volley duel with the New Yorkers. General Alpheus Williams comes in, supporting Sickles. He sends for this purpose the 3rd Brigade under Brigadier General Thomas Ruger, who flanks and drives back McGowan. Confederate Brigadier General James Lane takes his brigade and charges the 2nd Brigade of Williams under Colonel Samuel Ross. Rebels rout the raw recruits. The North Carolinians under Lane are able to take Union forward heavy guns, but are soon torn to pieces by massed artillery fire. Confederate Major William Pelgrim rushes to bring Confederate artillery into Hazel Grove to support the Confederate assault. Brigadier General William Pender takes his brigade, also of North Carolinians, and attacks Brigadier General Hiram Berry's division. 1st Massachusetts and 74th New York fall back under the Confederate assault, but Berry stops their rout. His brigades have been separated. He needs to talk with his brigade commander, Brigadier General Gershom Mott. He runs across the Orange Turnpike, dodging a storm of musketry, and confers with Mott about how to defend the line. He runs back across, but gets shot by a sharpshooter. Brigadier General Joseph Carr takes over the division. North of the turnpike, Brigadier General Edward Thomas takes his Georgians and attacks the 2nd Corps. He doesn't face mass artillery and overruns the 2nd Brigade of the 3rd Division of the 2nd Corps and captures Brigadier General Hayes. This threatens Fairview Knoll, but Sickles sends forward one of his brigades under Colonel Franklin and secures the line once more. Major General William French of the Union takes his division and slams into Thomas's rear and flank. The threat to the Union's artillery is eliminated. They chase the rebels back and pour fire into them. This threatens Jeb Stuart's assault. Stuart rides along his line, trying to rally his men. He had hoped that APL's division could carry the day, but unfortunately for him, he needed more men. He sends forward the reformed men of AP Hill, now just 10,000 men. They advance to the first line, but are soon sent back under mass artillery bombardment and repeated volleys. Major William Pegram moves 20 heavy guns along the Plank Road, which gives the Army of Northern Virginia something they have lacked for 2 years: artillery superiority.
Colonel, a glorious day.
Confederates open fire onto the 12th Corps artillery, but the Union is low on ammunition. They slow down the rate of fire. And as the 12th Corps infantry falls back, so must their cannons. Stuart takes close division and has him assault Hooker. The artillery of Colonel E. Porter Alexander is able to cut down rows of the tightly packed Federal infantry. The second line moves up against the Union and is struck down by rifle fire. Its commanders are killed and the assault is forced back. This leaves J.E.B with one last hope: Rhodes' division. He sends the third line in with whatever is left of the first two. The Confederate artillery strikes any Union units who try to counterattack, and the Union's artillery blasts apart the Confederate advance. The advance forces of the third line are shot to pieces by American musketmen. Confederate brigades get flanked by fire but continue to advance, but they are consistently stalled. Stuart then invokes Jackson's name, asking the men to remember their commander, and that brings the fire back into them. The Stonewall Brigade crosses over the earthworks and surges forward. They form the head of the column that hits the Union's flank, breaking them, and sending Hooker's line back to Chancellorsville, though it's impossible for them to press their assault. Hooker's at his HQ of the Chancellor House, waiting on a column when an artillery round hits it. He is thrown to the ground. He isn't badly hurt, just disoriented and angry. He moves to reassure his troops, riding around the line so all could see the commander was fine. He then moves to Bullock Place and starts drinking. He calls forward Major General Darius Couch. Couch thinks he is about to get command of the Army of the Potomac, but instead, he is told he will be a glorified courier. He orders McLaws and Anderson's division to join in the foray, pushing hard. Hooker at 9:45 gives the order to Couch: withdraw the army. At 10, the order is heard. Hancock, Slocum, and Couch are to hold the rear guard. Hooker's commanders are angry. Lincoln told him to use all his troops, and now he's fallen back without engaging the 1st, 5th, or 11th Corps. Stuart and Lee meet, able to only because of Hooker's withdrawal. Do you have the ability to capitalize on this? Confederate cannons open fire, setting the dry foliage on fire. Lee, mounted, rides through the blaze, trying to keep up the assault. Yells come through the smoke, and the wounded are engulfed in the flames. Lee looks around. This victory has cost him men, commanders, and Jackson for valuable time. He can't follow up on his success. His men are tired. Can he keep up this war, if this is what victory cost? Is he just another Pyrrhus? Now we turn to Sedgwick. He has stayed in his place, believing Lee to be fully before him. He has the 6th Corps and the 2nd Division of the 2nd Corps. In total, 28,500 men. Against him is 9,000 men of Major General Jubal Early. Hooker sends Brigadier General Gouverneur K. Warren to get Sedgwick to advance. Hooker had sent Warren a while ago, hoping to capture Lee before he linked up with Stuart. But that time has passed. Warren tells Hooker that Sedgwick is so passive that if he had sent anyone of a lower rank, the 6th Corps might have just ignored the order. Colonel Sharp, head of military intelligence, tells Sedgwick not to use telegraph or visual communication, as the enemy can read them. This guy is head of military intelligence? Brigadier General John Gibbon controls the 2nd Division of the 2nd Corps and forms on Sedgwick's right. The 6th Corps forms the rest of the line. They face off against General Barksdale of the extreme Confederate left, and the rest of General Jubal Early's men right in front of him on high ground. Barksdale is also supported by artillery. At 7 a.m., Sedgwick begins his assault of Barksdale's position. Barksdale instantly sends word to Early, asking for reinforcements. Early doesn't rush to his aid, instead falling back to earlier positions, leaving the brigade commander behind his stone wall, alone. This isn't to lower the strength of Barksdale's position, because as 3 Union regiments charge him, the 5th Wisconsin, 7th Massachusetts, and 6th Maine, repulses them. They charge again and he annihilates them, inflicting between 33% and 40% casualties. Under a flag of truce, the Union aids its wounded soldiers and realize how small the Confederate force before them is. A new attack is ordered, the 5th Wisconsin heading the assault.
When the signal is given, start at the double quick, and you will not stop until you hear the order to halt. You will never get that order.
The Wisconsinites move uphill and break through the enemy line. The Confederate artillery fires into them, but it's a futile move because after destroying the Confederate infantry, they capture 8 Confederate cannons. Jubal-Early hears of the end of Barksdale's position, which Barksdale is angry about.
I reckon people are satisfied that Barksdale's brigade and the Washington artillery can't whip the whole damned Yankee army.
He moves to form up between Lee and Sedgwick's force, as without him, nothing stands between the Army of Northern Virginia and the 6th Corps. John Sedgwick is still slow. He has used General Newton's division to defeat the Confederates, but suffered around 1,000 casualties. He can't continue forward using a battered division. He calls forward the force of Brigadier General William T.H. Brooks and his 3 brigades. But this takes time, and it isn't until 3 p.m. until he continues forward. Moving to Lee's rear is Confederate General Wilcox with his brigade. He orders the Union advance and falls back to Salem Church, where he begins to dig in. He is soon reinforced by men of McLaws and a brigade from Anderson's division. By 5:30, Sedgwick hurries up his force. He's been waiting on his 2nd Division under Brigadier General Howe, but he can't wait any longer. He has Brooke form on the Orange Turnpike, and has Newton form the right. Brigadier General Bartlett's brigade heads the assault. They advance on the church, and trade heavy gunfire with the Confederates, slowly gaining ground. The musket balls get lodged in the church's bricks. And still they advance. In the end, the 121st New York takes the church ground and graveyard. The Confederate reinforcements soon arrive. Brigadier General Kershaw's and Wolford's brigades. Kershaw and Wolford push the New Yorkers back. Further north on the field is Brown's New Jersey Brigade, which smashed into Confederate brigades under Seames and Mahone, but is repulsed. They engage in a long-range duel until Howe arrives, but at that time it's night. During the night, we should return to Major General Joseph Hooker, who starts pulling back towards U.S. Ford. He has been scared by the Confederate assault. He studies the best way to pull back. He doesn't want to give up his horseshoe defense, but doesn't see a way to win the battle. Lee, during the night, hears of the breakthrough by Sedgwick. He takes a majority of his force, Lee Stewart with the rest, and rides to McLaw and Early. He orders Early to close in and tighten the defense, but this is impossible during the night. Tomorrow, the 4th of May, Confederates would counterattack. The Confederates falter in their offense. General Anderson's men move, but McLaw's men won't. This takes time, and Anderson's men try linking up with McLaw at Salem Church and stop. Sedgwick sees the gathering force against him. He sends word to Hooker for assistance. He only has a corps and a division. He receives orders to fall back or advance. No assistance will be given. This is impossible. Early has cut him off. He therefore repositions, forming a horseshoe and creating an escape through Banks Ford. McLaw faces off against Newton and Brooks' men, while Anderson and Early faced off against Howe. Hooker sends word to Sedgwick. Reinforcements?
You must not count on much assistance without. I hear heavy firing.
Hooker has abandoned him. He has 80,000 men at his disposal, Sedgwick only 22,000, and Sedgwick is supposed to come to his rescue? Through the evening, Sedgwick slowly gets pushed back and back, but the Confederates suffer for every inch they take. Finally, his line falls back to the crossing, but the night has fallen and fog floods the battlefield, and Confederates can't advance. Sedgwick crosses the Rappahannock at night, having suffered 4,500 casualties. Hooker hears the sounds of Sedgwick's battle. He won't advance to Sedgwick's aid unless his commanders are in unanimous agreement. Reynolds, Meade, and Howard ask him to counterattack. They haven't suffered. But Sickles and Couch, whose corps have suffered greatly, want to fall back. Hooker says he will retreat.
What was the use of calling us together when he intended to retreat anyhow? As if crying for Union stupidity. Rain began falling late in the night and continued through the morning of the 5th of May. While weary Federalists crossed bridges to the east bank of the Rappahannock River, some Confederate officers felt Hooker was trying to trick them with his quick and easy withdrawal in the face of greatly outnumbered force. By 0900 on the 6th of May, the last Union troops reached the east bank, and Federal pontooniers pulled up the pontoon bridges, ending Hooker's thrust south. Hooker watches from the other side of the Rappahannock,
waiting to hear from General Stoneman. He wants to take Richmond, but won't take Lee on again. And Lee, after his greatest victory, is sad. His left hand is wounded in bed, and his right hand is still in North Carolina. Lincoln is horrified.
What will the country say? Think of it. 130,000 magnificent soldiers cut to pieces by 60,000 half-starved ragamuffins.
Hooker started his campaign, confident and correctly, hitting the enemy. He froze in the face of resistance and was thrown by Stonewall Jackson's attack. Lincoln has the better army. They are more numerous, well-drilled, and better equipped. The soldiers don't lose, the commanders do. After 2 victories since his repulse at Antietam, the question for Lee is, what will he do now? Shall he invade the North once again, or stay safe in his home state? No matter what he chooses, he needs Longstreet. In the end, Hooker lost 1,606 dead on the field, 9,762 wounded, and 5,919 captured or missing, for a total of 17,287 casualties from his initial force of 133,868 men. Confederates started with 60,298 men, suffered 12,764 casualties, 1,665 dead, 9,081 wounded, and 2,018 captured or missing. Confederates suffered casualties around 22% and the Union 13%, but the rebels held the ground. The Union lost 3 generals, 2 from Sickles' Corps, Major General Hiram Berry and Major General Ammiel Whipple, 2nd and 3rd Divisional commanders, respectively. And Edmund Kirby. He was only a lieutenant, but gets promoted for his bravery, posthumously. It's a horrible day for the Union. Their army broken once more. Their commander incompetent in front of the enemy. Lives lost just to lose ground. And all because of the cowardice of an officer. Oh God, what will happen to the Union? Then there are Sickles. As Sickles reflects on the day, he remembers his salient, the one that couldn't be defended. How Hooker betrayed him by giving up ground to form a complete line of battle. Hooker was wrong. That ground cost them the day. Defense instead of offense cost them the victory. Sickles won't make that mistake again. That's where the week ends. With the greatest defeat of the Union ever. And that's where the week ends, with the greatest defeat the Union Army of the Potomac has ever suffered. And by God, I had such high hopes for Hooker. I mean, he had it. He really had it. He had Lee pinned, Longstreet in a different state, and a career soldier just... Maybe next week we'll see how the Union works its way out of this disaster. Hello, it's the entire Civil War week by week team here, and if you made it through what is going to be my longest video, or one of my longest videos, then, well, thank you. It's been an honor reporting to you each week how this war continues, and I hope to see you next week. Take care.